Today we've got with us Shawn Shewchuk, best-selling author of Change Your Mind, Change Your Results, #1 results coach in the country. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Shawn. You've got a few different companies, and you've been working on several things over the years. What kind of companies do you have?
You know, I started, run, and profited from 43 different companies over the last, and this is more years than I care to count, to be honest with you. 43. And so very diverse, eclectic, I guess is the best way to describe it. But my primary focus is working with entrepreneurs, high achievers, to really take their lives, their businesses, and of course relationships, which are all intertwined, to the next level. So coaching is a big part of this, working with small business people, entrepreneurs. Probably about 40% of our time now, and this kind of happened organically, is working with folks in the expert space, so coaches, authors, speakers, consultants.
And what would you tell an entrepreneur that would be the best way for them to get started in their business?
Well, that's a loaded question, let's be clear. Getting started is one thing. The challenge for most people, though, is not what to do, it's when to do it. So typically the question I get asked is now the right time to start a business? And the reality is, yeah, it is. Let me be very clear about something. Any entrepreneur, you're going to encounter challenges. There is never a time where you get to a place where you go, I've arrived and I don't have to do anything more. I'm going to sit back and the money's just going to land in my lap. You know, in my book that you referenced at the beginning, and thank you for the intro, by the way, there's a clause in there, or a paragraph in there, where I talk about the sofa seatbelt, because so many people get locked in on this idea that all I have to do is set my goals and I have to set my intentions, and this magic pill is going to, pixie dusted. It's not real. Is there something behind mindset? Absolutely. I talk at length in my first book about mindset. But the missing component for most people is action, or lack of.
What kind of background do you have? What's your ideas of spirituality, of philanthropy?
So spirituality, one of the things I've always said for a very, very long time is we're all spiritual beings, living in a physical body. So there's always a spiritual component. That doesn't necessarily mean religious, let's be very clear about it. I'm not referring necessarily to God, if that's your belief system, sure. Universe, certainly. If you want to refer to it as a higher power, whatever fits with your belief system. But spirituality, yes. Philanthropy is an interesting question, because one of the things that I focused on for probably the last, I'm going to say 20 years, is how I can give back. For a very long time, we worked with young people who are, teenagers, 19, 20, 21, to help them get into business. Entrepreneurs, they wanted to succeed at doing something outside of the norm, outside of the box. And then the other side of that coin is I have a passion for animals. So for a number of years, I was involved with Humane Society and helping them. There's a flip side to that coin, where for years I was on boards of different organizations, but used to do a fundraiser once a year. We picked a charity and we raised, did a dinner and did the whole thing. Now, a big part of what I do is, there's 3 different charities I work with. I don't publicize anything. The funds come from somewhere. And it's not so much about publicity as it is about what the results are of that kind of contribution. Will we do events again in the charitable world and philanthropy? Yeah, I think that's key. There's a lot of people talk about strategic philanthropy, and there's something to that. We're actually investigating something right now where we look at doing some form of a scholarship for young people who want to get into business, and being able to help young people to become successful entrepreneurs. So that's something we're working on right now.
What's the first step you would suggest to a younger person getting into their own business?
Well, here's something interesting. I think probably the key in all this is get yourself 2 things. One, a mentor is somebody you don't pay for. So a mentor is definitely key. And second to that, you have to have a coach. I don't care how old or how young you are. It doesn't matter what level of education you have, what your experience is in the business world or outside of it. But if you look at any truly successful person today, they all have at least one, and in most cases, multiple coaches, people to guide them. The purpose, people ask me this question a great deal. They say, Shawn, why coach? And my idea of coaching is dramatically different than everyone else's, for the most part, I think. Coaching is a holistic process. It's very difficult to say, I'm a business coach, I'm a marketing coach, I'm a relationship coach, because at the end of the day, everything is going to come out on the table. You know, I say this a lot of times, you've probably heard me say this, if the rooms in this boardroom could talk, the stories they could tell, because everything comes out on the table. And if there's an imbalance in your personal life, it's going to affect your business. And if there's an imbalance or something that's incongruent in your business, it's going to affect your personal life. Caught in the middle between both of those are your relationships. Yeah. So it is holistic, it's everything. Here's something interesting. Up until about, you know this story already, up until about 2007, I guess I'm a recovering workaholic, so still a workaholic, but recovering workaholic. My dad was, my grandfather was, my brother is, and I was running some very large companies that I'd started and built. I literally would go to work at 9 in the morning and I'd come home at 3 the following morning. And I woke up one morning and the whole right side of my face swelled up. Oh, wow. And I went to the doctor, and my doctor wasn't there. There was another doctor filling in, and he sent me for x-rays. And I came back 3 or 4 hours later, and he put the x-rays up on the wall, and he was standing, 3 or 4 feet from me. And he very casually and nonchalantly said, "Shawn, I think you might have cancer." And I was in my 30s. My knees buckled because this is not supposed to happen. I walked outside of the doctor's office, and I took my phone and I started making phone calls to sell companies. And between the month of May and August of that year, I sold all the companies. And I took 8 or 9 months off, and I'm very, very blessed to have a home and an acreage in Western Canada, in British Columbia. And I literally took 9 months and did nothing but read 1,000 books. And so balance is different for everybody. To get back to the real answer to your question. The balance for you may be different than the balance for me or anyone who's watching this. And the harsh reality of it is you have to be able to get clear on what balance means. And that is based on what's important to you. Until the last 100 years, the word priority was never plural, it was singular. So what are your, and we'll use today's vernacular, what are your priorities? And I think your balance is based on what your priorities are. Prioritize your priorities in a way that those things and people, more importantly, that are important to your family, your friends, your children, those are your priorities. Yes, money is important. Yes, we all need it. It's societal norms. But once we start to understand it's not about the money, but it's what money can do for us.
Absolutely. And you've got an event coming up here really soon as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
90 Days to Results is a weekend event. For a number of years, we've done weekend events and worked with an entire room of people and taught literally for 2 solid days. And this event is different because it's 2 solid days, but it's about implementation. Listen, we're inundated with information. There's tons of information, and there's a ton of overnight gurus and experts out there telling you just enough to ensure that you can kind of make some progress, or hopefully, but it's not real. It's not really what it's painted to be. So we're going to have information, but listen, if you agree with me on one thing, and for those of you watching this, if you agree with this, that there's more than sometimes what you're fed by the media, etc., on and on, there's implementation. That's the missing component. So at 90 Days to Results on October 1 and 2, we are going to implement. Like when you walk out of that hotel room at the end of 2 days, you're going to have a blueprint in your hand that you can guarantee the results. Life, business, career, and relationships.
Thanks so much for joining us today, Shawn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.